I'm Geoffrey Van Orden. I've been Conservative member of the European Parliament for the past 10 years for the East of England. That's covering the 6 counties of the East of England. I must say, I see my job not as an MEP. It's not my job to promote the European Union. I see it as my job to go to Brussels and speak up on behalf of the British people, and in particular the people of East Anglia, and that's what I do. And I say the same thing in Brussels as I say in England, and vice versa. And I think that's very important, to be true to yourself and true to your electorate, because that's they should expect no less from you. I've been involved in a lot of the big issues, the big national issues. I'm Conservative Defence spokesman. I've been very prominent speaking on issues such as immigration and enlargement, those sorts of areas, terrorism. But of course that's half of my activities. The other half are what I would call the bread and butter issues, which are very relevant to local people. Whether we're farmers, whether we're fishermen, whether we're housewives, consumers, whatever. Because we need to bear in mind that, like it or not, and there's a lot about the European Union I don't like, but the fact is we're in it, and we're going to remain in it. So anyone that tells you different is really misleading you. So we've got to make the best of it. And in order to make the best of it, you need a good team of Conservative MEPs who are going to stand up for your interests over in Brussels, and that's what I try to do. So I've been very active on a whole range of local issues, whether it's helping our farmers, responding to their concerns about sugar beet, about the pesticides legislation, and matters of that nature, trying to do our best for them. Whether it is to do with flood protection and coastal defences and matters of that nature, or indeed business legislation. There's so much legislation that comes out of Brussels which impacts on our local businesses and therefore our local economies. And I think in particular at the moment of something called the Working Time Directive. Now, many of you will understand this imposes a 48-hour working week on our workers. At the moment, Britain has an opt-out from this. In other words, individuals can opt out of this Working Time Directive. The European Parliament, contrary to our wishes as Conservatives, wants to scrap that opt-out, and we fought very hard to retain it. Quite honestly, if we don't keep it, it's going to impact on all of our lives, not least, for example, on our hospitals. And I've been to see doctors, and they tell me that the training of young doctors will be affected if we lose the opt-out. Our retained firemen, bear in mind that half of the firemen across the east of England are retained firemen, volunteers, in other words, people with other jobs who will be seriously affected if we lose the opt-out to this Working Time Directive. So that's an important area that we're fighting hard as Conservatives to make sure we keep that opt-out. Let me give you another example of the sort of work that we're doing. The United Kingdom is the second largest net contributor to the European Union's budget. Now, some of that money comes back to us in the east of England, several hundred million over the coming years. Now, I regard that money as essentially British taxpayers' money recycled through Brussels, coming back to us. And we've got to make sure, well, first of all, we get our hands on as much of that money for local use as possible, and that money is put to good use. And that is why I've been trying to get money into our road system and our rail system, and I'm delighted that we've had a certain amount of success in those areas. So these are the sorts of things that we're doing as MEPs, which I think are very relevant to you locally. What we don't want to see is a shift of more power from the United Kingdom to Brussels. Now, the Labour government, they promised the British people a referendum on a European constitution, what is now known as the Treaty of Lisbon. They failed to fulfil that promise. The Conservatives have said very clearly, we will give the British people a referendum on the Treaty of Lisbon. I've fought very hard on this. I've organised campaigns right across the east of England. We've had something like 200,000 brochures that have gone out. I've done this in conjunction with our local councillors and our local members of Parliament and candidates. And it's been, I think, a very successful campaign to keep this very much in the public eye. It would be a disaster if the Treaty of Lisbon were to actually come into legislation. It would have an enormous impact on our country, and it will be an enormous step in the direction of further European integration, which quite honestly I don't want, and I don't think you want it.